and it's an honor to celebrate with you all. We're going to be getting started in about 1 to 2 minutes, so feel free to grab a drink, eat some delicious homemade cookies. If you haven't signed in, go ahead and sign in quickly, but please make your way to the seats. We'd love for you to sit down and join us. Thank you. Hello everyone, thank you so much. We're going to be started very shortly, so if you have not gotten a chance to take a seat, there are a few up front here. Thank you again for coming to the Gene Crow Advocacy Center's 10th anniversary. It is so wonderful to have you all here.
Great, thank you everyone for being here. So I hope everyone saw that no job is too small for our Mayor, Freddie O'Connell, who fixed our table over here. So I'm going to let these two young, wonderful women introduce themselves.
Hello, and thank you all for coming today. I'm Whitney Blanton.
And I am Maria Arvizu.
We are both from the Office of Family Safety. Many of you here may not know who Jean Crow was. Maria and I worked for her for many years when she was the managing attorney for the Legal Aid Society in the Family Law section.
Under Jean's leadership, Legal Aid focused on holistic advocacy, addressing a wide range of client issues such as protection from violence, housing, healthcare access, and other essential services. She enhanced this approach by hiring full-time advocates who connected clients with the necessary resources to ensure their safety and help them break free from the cycle of abuse.
Jean lived out her professional mission with determination and enthusiasm. She juggled a nearly impossible amount of responsibility at the same time: a full caseload, drafting laws to protect survivors, starting the Nashville Coalition Against Domestic Violence, serving on several boards of the American Bar Association, mentoring interns, and leading the family law section of Legal Aid. She did everything brilliantly. Nothing fazed Jean. No problem was too hard to work around. When things got challenging, she found new and creative solutions.
Jean had a talent for making the workplace feel like home. She brought her team together around the lunch table at our weekly case review meetings. We discussed tough cases, but she also made space for joyful moments. She brought us delicious homemade cakes and made us feel cared for. She encouraged us to know each other and our stories, to lift each other up, and especially to be an outstanding team for our clients. Outside the office, she connected people and earned everyone's respect in the legal and domestic violence communities.
We miss Jean's determination, expertise, guidance, and ability to make everyone feel like the most important person in the room. Jean carried herself with grace and elegance. She was confident in her abilities to bring people together to provide survivors with the best services possible.
We admire Jean for her deep respect for her clients and the dedication she brought to cases that most attorneys would avoid. It was remarkable to see how she handled complex cases, such as representing a minor forced into child marriage or defending a client's rights to gold held by an abuser in a foreign bank. Jean worked with clients from different backgrounds, believing in their potential to create a better future, free from abuse. She was relentless in her efforts to provide them with that opportunity.
Jean would be so very proud of the quality of services provided to the clients we serve here at the JCAC, the holistic approach we take, and that we have evolved into 2 locations and are a national model in the United States, staffed by advocates, run by advocates.
This center could not have a better name than the Jean Crow Advocacy Center. The work being done here honors her groundbreaking legacy. Her heart is here every day. Thank you again for gathering here to honor Jean and to celebrate this momentous occasion.
So I've got to stress what Whitney just said, you know, a center staffed by advocates, run by advocates, and that's the special ingredients of the Jean Crow Advocacy Center, and I agree she would be most proud. Really excited to see such a great crowd here of human beings and 2 dogs that are support dogs at the Family Safety Center. Want to shout out a big appreciation to Courtney and the rest of her outreach team. If you all can wave your hands and stand up. All of them have worked so hard for the past 2 weeks, and you will see that there's been a lot of baking here, just like Jean Crow bakes. So we have to-go packages of homemade chocolate chip cookies, so please enjoy those as well. We just really appreciate you being here. So I want to start with some, we always start with the VIPs, like who do we want to stand out and recognize? But I really want to start off with like the VIPs in my world, which is the VIPs, the people that have been doing this work for, over 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Could you raise your hand if you're one of those people? Because this is tough work to do for that long, so. Now I'm going to move on to the other VIPs, and I'd like to acknowledge State Representative Bo Mitchell is here, State Representative Darren Jernigan is here, We have a lot of council members, which is really exciting. Aaron Evans is here, Sherry Weiner, Robert Nash, Jordan Huffman, Jenny Welsh, Terry Vo, Delisha Porterfield. Really appreciate you all being here. Obviously, we have Mayor O'Connell here, who jumped up into action a few minutes ago. We have Vice Mayor Angie Henderson, District Attorney General Glenn Funk, and our newly sworn in Judge Stephanie Williams is here. So thank you for joining us today. So when I was thinking about what to talk about today, about the Gene Crow Center and what it means to our community, just one word just kept pulsing in my mind, and that word was reform. JCAC is a great example of successful reform in our criminal justice system. It is, and it's special because to have successful reform, it must be launched by really strong leaders. Okay, and we had those leaders in Gene Crow and Judge Philip Robinson, who went to then Mayor Carl Dean and said, you know, our domestic violence response in our government, our courts, is really not serving victims. I'm afraid someone's going to get killed, and we need to do something about it as a city. And that's when they worked together and decided that the city was going to do a safety and accountability assessment. But they didn't just decide to do a little piece like all the other cities in the country, because Nashville thinks much bigger than that. And so it was decided that we were going to audit, assess the entire system that Metro has any control over. So it was 911, police response, the patrol response, detective response, night court with the commissioners, this courthouse and criminal court, general sessions, circuit court for orders of protection, probation, and fatality review, how we review deaths so we can learn lessons. So those were all the things we worked on for 2 years and came up with a host of recommendations, this team of over 100 people. And most concerning to the entire team was the safety of victims in this courthouse. So by far, that jumped off the page as what must be addressed immediately. And that was the beginnings of the Gene Crow Absey Center. That's the concern it was born out of, that victims were floundering in court. So before the Gene Crow Absey Center, victims would show up, go through the mess of trying to get on an elevator, which anyone that works in this courthouse knows that's really hard at 8 in the morning, find their way to the correct floor, to the correct courtroom, be greeted, not by us types of advocates, but be greeted by their offender's family, their offender's gang associates. And that's where the intimidation would begin, as well as other sides saying, you don't really have to stay here, you can go home. So we have a lot of victims being intimidated, scared, not coming back to court because of their experience here in the courthouse. And so now, with the Gene Crow Absey Center, we have a safe, separate, and supportive place for victims to wait while they're in court, where they get a lot of advocacy services, and they work with the district attorney's office, and everything is done privately and quietly in a humane and respectful environment. So when you go through the Gene Crow Center, after this is done, it's going to look like, wow, this is a pretty easy and simple change. But as anyone who's done any reform work knows, that reform is really hard. And it's hard because reform comes with resistance. People resist change because of the fear of the unknown. We resist it because we worry that it might make things worse for me, my job, how I do things. It's easy to get defensive because I don't want to be associated with the old way we did things, and if the new way's better, that makes me look bad. Self-doubt, can I even do it the new way? Will I be successful? Annoyance, it's creating more work for me. And uncertainty, it upsets the status quo. I can't really be on autopilot in my work if it's a whole new way of doing things. And the Gene Crow Center wasn't an exception to that. There was resistance in the system, but everyone decided to get over it. We knew we were resistant, we knew there weren't great reasons for it, and we decided to get over it as a collective and put aside these concerns and prioritize victim experience over our own. A big theme is what is most convenient for the victims, not what's most convenient for us as the practitioners. And we did it really well with this center. We weren't just the first city in the country to have a court-based family justice center, but we are the national, and I love that word, the. We are the national model of court-based family justice centers, and that's something to really be proud of. We got it right, and we know we got it right because our customers tell us we got it right. I'm going to read some of the quotes over the years. These first 3 quotes came in year 1, and I particularly like these. Thank you for having a better place than the bench in the hall for waiting. Thank you for being so kind, helpful, and understanding. The interesting thing about these quotes is like people came to court 2 weeks before and it was the old way, and then 2 weeks after they came here. So we have lots of distinction in what it was like. I am delighted to see the center open. This is a welcome change in the process after going through court for nearly 2 years. This is a wonderful idea. I was afraid to have to face my ex-husband in court. I was able to relax and not feel intimidated. And then over the years we've heard, I never knew I wasn't fighting alone. It was so hard coming here, knowing he would have a support system, so this really made a difference. I thank all of the women in my family who have been victims. Now through you, I have a voice and will no longer be afraid. Everyone made this nightmare of a situation bearable. And then we have clients that acknowledge those that helped make this happen. One advocate said, one victim said, the advocate did not judge me, she just wanted to help. It made me feel, for the first time in my life, safe, loved, and wanted. Thank you, Mayor Megan Barry, who is here with us today. So that victim, there she is, that victim came in under Mayor Barry's tenure. And then there was also a thank you, Mayor Carl Dean. You did a wonderful job with this center. The staff was awesome. So, all of our constituents, they care about us making a difference in their experience. And this last comment, we get this a lot. This was a helpful program. Wish it had been available when my sister was killed in 2002. All this is great. And I'm not going to say all this is great, but I'm going to say all this is great and there's still lots of opportunity for reform in this area of work. We still do a lot of things in our court system that is exactly the same way we did in the 1990s, back when I was a DA, which was ages and ages ago. And we do them the same despite the fact that we are a much larger city, despite the fact we've had a lot of positive changes in the law, and despite the fact that we know a lot more about victim risk and what those indicators are. In our court system today, cases still progress too slow, especially those high-risk cases. Risk assessment tools and full records checks are still not accessible before setting bond and bond conditions. Domestic violence training still are not mandated in this specialty area of practice, in particular regarding strangulation cases. We still have a disjointed manner of setting order protection cases between 2 different courthouses. And for the most part, we still don't even explore if offenders have actually dispossessed of their firearm as required by law. And we still don't have a consistent approach to holding offenders accountable when they are blatantly disregarding court orders and escalating in their dangerousness. So it's like a big breath. That's a lot of work for us all to do, but there's really good news. And the good news is that our city is really good at working together on reform. And our domestic violence response systems. And we are especially good at leading the way nationally in those reforms. Our secret ingredient is that we work really well together. And mostly because we just really like and respect each other. The number of hugs and smiles and greetings, we are a strong community in this work. And as everyone who's in this field knows, this work is patient and persistent work. And reform work is patient and persistent work. So we all have the talent for it. So let's create a new national success beyond the JCAC and use the success of the JCAC as a great springboard to keep moving forward. So all that being said, I want to introduce the next speaker, which is General Funk. And he is really been one of the great partners with the Gene Crow Avsey Center. When Glenn took office, it was almost, I think, like the first day this center opened. And one of our biggest fears here that day was are the DAs going to show up? Because they have to work out of here. And Glenn made sure that the whole system on his end happened smoothly and graciously and without resistance, even though it made the job of the ADAs much harder. Upon taking office, Glenn Funk fully staffed and increased the number of domestic violence attorneys and victim witness coordinators to the highest level it had ever been. And he also created a program back in those offices there where his team meets with domestic violence victims long before their first court date to prepare them and expose them to what's yet to come. He is committed to improving domestic violence victim safety and offender accountability. My favorite example being his strong and thoughtful work to ensure that there was a carved-out exception for domestic violence offenders qualifying for pretrial diversion, because that's just not a good match in domestic violence to just roll you on out and release without anything holding you under some conditions. So please welcome District Attorney General Glenn Funk.
Thanks, Diane. One of the great things that Nashville has going for us, maybe our greatest natural resource, is that we have leaders like Diane, because Diane Lance is a person who is never satisfied. Even in her celebration of these 10 years in this anniversary, she still has a laundry list of things that we need to be doing next, and I'm excited to take that journey with her. We are blessed with that. She touched on this, and so let me just share with you. Back, let's say 15 years ago, we had court, but we didn't have any real services for victims beyond some victim witness coordinators and 4 assistant DAs who were outnumbered and did not have the proper resources to support them and to support victims. And I'm not saying this as a knock on where we were, because even then we were still more serious about domestic violence than any other county in the state of Tennessee. But with Diane's leadership and Mayor Dean's leadership, we underwent this audit of our criminal justice system with regards to domestic violence, and we identified where the problems were, and a document was produced that talked about where the holes in our supports were. So we went about working on that as a city. This facility here is really a testament to the vision and drive of not only Diane Lance, but Mayor Dean, and we are very fortunate that it has been supported by a string of mayors and councils who have shared this dedication. Mayor Berry was instrumental in making sure that this facility that was conceived and birthed under Mayor Dean was able to fully flower into the support system that it is. Mayor Briley, unflagging in his commitment to this. Mayor Cooper, constant supporter of the Office of Family Safety and this center. And now Mayor O'Connell has continued, and we would not be where we are without that legacy of support from our city government. Diane touched on this, and let me just stress to you, our office now, the district attorney's office, has 9 assistant district attorneys doing nothing but domestic violence cases. We have 9 victim witness coordinators doing domestic violence cases. We have a 3-person prosecution support unit that does nothing but help fill in the gaps in the investigations, give victims rides, whatever support they need to make sure that they can come to court and testify without fear. That's over 1/8 of our office is dedicated to domestic violence cases, because half of our violent crime is domestic violence related, and that's where we need to have our resources, and this is still and will always be the biggest unit in our office. Every morning we get a daily arrest report from the police department of who all has been arrested on domestic violence cases, and we call that morning to the victims of those cases, and we invite them to come and meet with us right across the hallway here in room 111, where we can meet with these individuals, we can find out how they've been hurt, we can find out what supports they need, we can offer our own supports, and we can walk them over to this facility and let the Office of Family Safety provide wraparound services to those folks. Of the people that we can get to come in within 24 hours of the incident that caused them to call the police, over 80% show up for court. That's an astounding number that cannot be no other county in the state can replicate that number anywhere close. The folks that show up for court mean there's going to be greater accountability for the offenders. And even better, we're going to see wraparound services and support for those victims where they can end up in a safer relationship, whether it's this one or the next. After they have that meeting the very first day, they are no longer intimidated by the courthouse, because this is an intimidating place. They now know that they're going to have a safe place to wait that is comfortable, and they will have services that day. Leads to better outcomes for us. And I really believe that if we continue to do this right, we've been doing it for 10 years and we're going to do it forever. But I think that when it comes to domestic violence, this is oftentimes learned behavior. You learn from what you see your parents go through. If dad beats mom, you're much more likely as a young boy to commit domestic violence. If dad beats mom as a young woman, you might end up becoming the victim of domestic violence. This is not normal. This is not acceptable. We need to end it in this generation. And thanks to this facility, thanks to the commitment of our leaders across the city, and thanks to a criminal justice system that is trying to make sure that victims are not re-victimized by the court system, but are instead supported by the court system, I think we can make those changes. And I'm excited to see Nashville continue to lead the country. So thank you, Diane. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor Barry. I don't know if the other 3 mayors are here today, but thanks to our council for doing this. I also want to just point out real quickly, Chris Buford is an assistant DA in our office. He's now the team leader in Division 5 felony courts, but he helped us make the bridge in our office to these full supports that we've been giving, and his leadership has been tremendous throughout my entire tenure and his entire time in the office that predates me. We've got Christina Johnson. Christina, just stand up real quick. She is the current team leader for domestic violence in our office, and she is amazing. She's been recognized nationwide for her leadership. I also see Kristen Minke in the back. She was an assistant DA and did an amazing job when she was outnumbered, and her heart is as big as the whole state of Tennessee, and she has devoted her life towards supporting victims of domestic violence as well. So I just wanted to make sure I let you know I saw you and make sure everybody else can see you too, Kristen. And then Tim Dickerson is the head of our prosecution support unit. Stand up, Tim. Right? He has a certain charisma that can help people get to court when they are afraid to come to court, and he can help them get back home safely, and he can make sure that he can find any gaps in the proof that's necessary for us to be able to successfully make our case. So Tim, you're doing a great job. Christina, Chris, Kristen, I could name all of our victim witness coordinators who are here, but I know that I've probably gone over my 5 minutes that I've been allotted on this. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for your commitment to support victims of domestic violence.
You're a little taller than I am, General Funk. There we go.
Hello everyone, I'm Vice Mayor Angie Henderson, and in my capacity as Vice Mayor, I serve as President of the City Council, many of whom are represented here today, so thank you to our council members for joining me. I am grateful for the invitation to be with you today to celebrate this milestone. While I often share and discuss the good and important and nationally renowned work of Nashville's Office of Family Safety, this is only my second time in this space. And I vividly recall the first, when early in my service as chair of the Women's Caucus of the Metro Council, I organized a field trip for the caucus to visit here and to learn from Diane, Director Lance, and her staff about this center. It's hard to believe, but I think that was about 8 years ago. The next time I had occasion to share the good work of this center was shortly after that first visit, when I encouraged a dear friend of mine to seek this space out when she was struggling through a prolonged divorce from an emotionally abusive husband. The Metro Council has a Public Health and Safety Committee. Well represented here today, again, Chair Aaron Evans is here. Aaron, will you wave? Thank you, Chair Evans. And we have this committee because public health and public safety do go hand in hand. And the scourge of domestic violence is a sad example of this fact. Domestic violence, as General Funk spoke to earlier, accounts for 48% of reported violent crimes against a person in Nashville. Growing up with and continued exposure to domestic violence has been described by survivors as living with a terrorist in your home every day. And children are living in these homes too. The Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, also known as ACEs, reveals that exposure to domestic violence increases the risk of health, social, and behavioral problems throughout a person's lifespan. Children exposed to violence have a constant activation of their stress response system, like always walking on eggshells. Persistent fear and anxiety of an offender's violent outburst can negatively affect the actual architecture of a child's brain, impacting a child's ability to learn, to regulate their emotions, and to engage socially. Children in domestic violence homes are physically abused or seriously neglected at a rate 1,500 times higher than the national average. Those who grow up with domestic violence are 6 times more likely to commit suicide and 50% more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. If you grow up with domestic violence, you are 74% more likely to commit a violent crime against someone else, 3 times more likely to repeat this cycle in adulthood. Growing up with domestic violence is the most significant predictor of whether or not someone will engage in domestic violence later in life. So why is it so important to support victims in the very process that holds these violent offenders accountable? Tennessee Victims' Bill of Rights states that victims have the right to be protected from the accused and to be free from intimidation, harassment, and abuse. And this center provides that so very well. For victims of domestic violence, often that protection can only come from the courts. And we need to uphold our responsibility to the safety of those victims, future victims, and the community, including its children. We have work to do. We can celebrate the good as we are today and know that we can and must do better. I know that Mayor O'Connell joins me in his care and concern for Nashville's women and children and our collective community safety. And I have been reminded in recent days, as we've spoken at several events together, what a great job he is doing, leading with empathy, as a pragmatic problem solver, willing to combine a bold vision with all the diligent steps it takes to achieve that vision. So please join me in welcoming Mayor O'Connell.
Well, thank you, Vice Mayor, and this is a remarkable moment for me on a personal level. I was here for the grand opening, and I actually think, Diane, there may have been a mistake in the program because there's no way that was 10 years ago. It is amazing what a journey I know it was to get to this milestone. And I do want to echo my thanks to General Funk, because without his support, the idea of a court-based family justice center would not be possible at the level that it functions. You heard a little bit about it from Diane and from General Funk. But this is a process of affirming victims we serve during their most vulnerable moments. And I think, too, huge thanks to Diane, the staff at JCAC and the Office of Family Safety. Diane, to you and your entire team, thank you for your dedication, the work I know it took to get this center open 10 years ago, and who it's named for. Jean Crow has been called the mother of the domestic violence movement. She passed away in 2015, but not before the launch of this center, which opened the year before, many thanks to her. And I still remember from, like the Vice Mayor, I had a very early opportunity to tour the center when it opened, and the thoughtful design of this as a court-based center was so visible and so memorable 10 years ago. And it's because so many thoughtful people were involved in its creation. So thank you to everyone who honored and sustained Gene Crow's work and expanded it. And it's an honor to be with you, but it's funny because I know Diane talked about an assessment, and that's not usually a headline grabber. But what that assessment enabled has been so fundamentally important about the way we care for one another, and that is how this really did get started in 2013, was having all of the information in hand that taught us what we needed to do better. And it led to the launch of the first court-based family justice center in the country, as well as the first government department focused on victims of interpersonal violence, which today is our Office of Family Safety. And just like today's 10-year milestone is an important occasion for reflection, we also recently celebrated the 5th anniversary of the Family Safety Center on Murfreesboro Pike, which also has become a national model, with officials from cities across the country coming to Nashville to replicate the work so many of you do here together. And I think the Vice Mayor spoke to this. Our investments as a city reflect our priorities, and when it comes to violence against women, children, and other adults, we invest in solutions like the Gene Crow Advocacy Center and in so many of the people who are working here. We have invested in safety, security, and the opportunity for recovery, and we will continue to do so. To that end, in terms of what the Office of Family Safety has accomplished this year with those investments, in fiscal year 2024, OFS, the training program, trained 15,338 local and national professionals. This is 4,609 more training events than the previous fiscal year, and it's the largest increase to date. The Office of Family Safety expanded their outreach team, allowing for more outreach initiatives, including community events, an increase in partnership, and increased awareness of services to marginalized and underserved communities. And they have presented at 2 national trainings on domestic violence and high-risk responses. Here in Nashville, we've established specialized domestic violence judges, prosecutors, and as you heard from General Funk, victim witness coordinators. We have created a counseling division within the police department for survivors of homicide, rape, and severe abuse. It remains one of the few police divisions of its kind in the country. And all of these elements of what has been a direct result of that introspection from just over a decade ago are all things to be proud of. As we had this conversation last year about opportunities for improvement, we talked some about the importance of second responders, and that is exactly what JCAC and the Family Safety Center are. This is what so many of you do. It's life-saving for the people you serve, and a big help to our first responders. Most recently, FSC practitioners have been collaborating with MMPD's Family Intervention Program to learn how to respond to the emotional safety needs in the aftermath of a disaster or instance of mass violence. And that is how we can do this work successfully together. First responders and second responders collaborating, moving people from crisis to opportunity. This work is critically important. Thank you for making Nashville safer for women, children, and the most vulnerable among us, and for reinforcing faith in local government in the way that it works together and can make differences in people's lives and those who need it the most. And Diane, thank you for ensuring that today's milestone is not merely a reflection on successes past, but also a charge to a more secure future for us all. So to all of you who animate this building with your passion and service, and to those who are no longer with us but made these 10 years possible, happy anniversary to the Gene Crow Advocacy Center.
All right, thank you, Mayor O'Connell. We're about to conclude, but before we do, I do want to invite up the 3 members of our team that were here on day 1 of the Gene Crow Advocacy Center: Whitney Blanton, Maria Arvizu, and Anjanetta Collier. You know, sometimes I feel like the motto of my department is